Hello everyone, welcome to this video. My name is Ryan, I have cerebral palsy, and I've used a walker my entire life. Today we're going to talk about calling people with disabilities inspirational. A few days ago, I was walking through LAX and I had my luggage. I just got back from a flight. I was going through this tunnel and a guy's walking next to me and he says, "Hey, how's it going?" And I was just like, "Hey, what's up? How are you?" And he goes, "You're an inspiration to me." And I was polite. I was just like, "Oh, thanks, whatever." And just had small talk with him and his family that he was walking with. And I started thinking about how there's this thing in the disability space where a lot of people hate it when someone comes up to them and calls them inspirational simply because they have a disability. There's actually a term, they call it inspiration porn. And it's this idea that people with disabilities are objectified to make the other person feel better or something like that. And I totally disagree. I don't have a problem with it at all. In fact, I don't even really understand why people are so offended by it. When you think about inspiration in general, what can you be inspired by? You can be inspired by anything. I get inspired by sunsets or beautiful scenery or good music or whatever, If someone comes up to you and they say that, "Hey, your disability inspires me," or "I find you inspirational because you have a disability," who cares? The guy that came up to me at the airport, maybe he was just being nice and trying to make conversation. Maybe he was genuinely inspired by my existence. I'm glad that me getting up in the morning and just getting out of bed gave inspiration to somebody. That's cool. You can be inspired by anything. And so when people get bent out of shape, being like, "Oh, don't call me inspirational just because I got out of bed in the morning." Well, what if someone is genuinely inspired because you just got out of bed in the morning? I used to do interviews with rock, metal, and hardcore bands back in the day. And I remember interviewing this guy that everyone considered a legend. He was like a legend in metal. And I asked him, I was like, "People consider you a legend. What are your thoughts on being called a legend?" And he said to me, "That's for other people to decide. That's something that other people assign to you. That's not something you can assign to yourself." And the same thing applies when you have a disability and someone calls you inspirational. I can't help it if a guy randomly comes up to me at LAX and says, "Hey, I find you inspirational." You know what I think is actually really lame though? Is when people deliberately try to be inspirational. You should never try to be inspirational. That's super lame. That's like, honestly, that's probably the lamest thing you can do is deliberately try to be inspirational. If other people find you inspirational, they are allowed to assign that to you. And so if other people assign the label of inspirational to you, and if that's the way that it is, then you can't be mad when people call you inspirational. You don't get to control what other people find meaningful.